date and stress test our own hypothesis. On the same basis, looking at our balance sheet, we embarked on that journey as well, and then we settled on Lazard. So these strategies that we are sharing with you, as it turns out, this direction that we are taking, as it turns out, has been validated by both Lazard in as far as the balance sheet is concerned and BCG on all the operational things. So you might, as management, do know that my problem is costs, and my cost is people, or my problem is energy, my problem is debt. But you needed someone to help you just go through that in a methodological way. People that have seen other utilities go through similar situations. So Lazard we were warned by many people that we spoke to about Lazard that is going to tell us that we must get the bondholders to take a shave and a haircut. Quite the opposite. They have not made that suggestion. But this that we are speaking of, in as far as the balance sheet, in as far as it relates to debt relief, these are the conversations that have come out of the work that they've done for us. And our problem, as I say, on debt, that is just a global word to use, is the load of the debt and indeed the serviceability of the debt. Those are the two problems that we have. So if we can get some relief of the load, there would be debt that we would be able to service. At the end of the day, Paramani, I don't know whether it's Paramani or Caleb, who told you've got an EBITDA of 45 billion and you've got debt servicing of 50 billion. Before you start, the game is over and you are Kaiser Chiefs in this instance, you've lost. So it just was not a way that was sensible to go. Ted, I'm sorry that we're confusing. And no, I'm not really being funny, I'm serious. I'm sorry that we do, because it's really out of the space that we find ourselves. But we have repeatedly said this. There is no way we can guarantee that there would be no load shedding. Even in the Eskom that you did run, you can't guarantee there's be no load shedding. We cannot. Now, more than that time, we are not able to guarantee there will be no load shedding. We will continue to do things that would make sure that load shedding is in minimal, and we have plans to mitigate the effect of that. We cannot guarantee that there will be no load shedding. So to the extent there are Eskom people that went to Parliament and guaranteed that there's be no load shedding, I don't know where they get that. We cannot. I cannot, as chairman of the board, the chief executive cannot, the CFO cannot, the head of operations cannot. The minister, who's the shareholder, cannot give you that guarantee. So I apologize for that misstatement. How much assets do we have? I haven't used a figure of 800 billion in my presentation. You did? Yeah. So Caleb will answer the question of 800 billion. We did not. I'll come back to you on that. We did not talk about segmental accounting. If there's any accounting word I've used was profit and loss. Folks, I'm dead serious. We spoke about functional separation. We used words ring fence to actually say we want to ring fence this, look at them in their own P&L so that we can know what is it that is carrying, how much of it is carrying of the other, and who the other is. We have spoken about doing that functional separation to look at generation as generation so that we can focus in a transparent way, try and find where inefficiencies are or where where efficiencies are. It was never having segmental accounting. We were never talking about the balance sheet of one division versus the other. We may end up there. That's not where we are at this point. Yeah, I agree with you, Ted, and I did say that I don't know what information you were looking at when you predicted the coal cliff, which has finally happened. The answer, correctly so, I agree with you, we need to invest in our coal plus mines. There is no other solution. Those mines need to put money back into them. We don't have that money now, but that should not stop us from identifying that this particular mine needs a new drag line. A new drag line would cost X, we must put that drag line there. These mines are ours, they are mined by other mining companies. The CapEx is our responsibility. Eskom, in its wisdom, took a decision not to invest in coal plus mines. They took a decision, whatever their reason. We are now sitting here to live the reality of not doing that. And that's not started last year. They have not been investing in the coal plus mines over the last 7 or 10 years. So what we are experiencing now is a function of that. So I agree with you, we need to invest in them. Because there is just no way we're going to maintain the coal, the electrical model, electricity generation model of South Africa that has made us to be this cheap. Is because the model was based on build power stations on top of coal fields, convey coal from the mines to the power station, and transport electricity. We are now transporting coal to transport electricity. And the prices that we can get to get this coal is very much out of reach. So there is no answer in the long term that is not about investing. It is in this point that it was in that spirit that I was saying, whichever way I look at this one, somebody has to pay for this. Investment means paying. Either the consumer or the taxpayer. It might turn out to be the same person, but somebody has to pay for this. Ours is to come and look and identify what the problem is and come with a detailed plan to address the problem. Ours is not to pay. So ours is to go back to South Africa and say, guys, doesn't matter anymore what happened over the last 10 years. This is the effect of what happened in the last 10 years. How do we fix it? We are having these proposals of how to fix it. To be able to address them square, we are approaching them on having to functionally look at them one straight in the eye and say, this is the problem in generation, this is the problem in transmission. So I agree with you. To date, the revenue growth has been driven by tariff. I can offer you one thing. I am committed to an ethical and a prudent way of running an organization. In return, if I can show you that there is prudence in determining this cost, and the MYPD requires me to prove that I've been efficient and prudent in the costing, and they will give me, I'll recover that cost plus a certain margin. That's what I want in return. Now, for now, we cannot argue. We cannot tell you how much of corruption is in the 15%. Precisely my point, why we must functionally separate, so that we can reach to the point to say, look at any coal mine, any coal-powered station that generates in this way, what is their cost, and we should be within that benchmark. And then we would need to get a tariff that is cost reflective, not a tariff that is cost plus corruption reflective. So we're doing our part to try and clean that corruption. We are determined to demonstrate that the cost is the cost to generate the power. There are no additions that go to corruption. There have been in the past, I agree. There may still well be in the present, I agree. But we are determined to root it out to the extent we find it. We are prepared to have our costing to be subjected to all tests to be seen as, if there's a reason why South African costs are higher than anywhere else, we must be able to demonstrate and give that. I think I have, on the voucher machines, yeah, I still don't understand why machines that should no longer be working in the Eskom technology are still out there producing vouchers. I know for a fact it is happening. And I know for a fact that our legal and forensic people are working with the law enforcement agency to try and get to the bottom of that. But clearly, as I understand this with my taxi driving background, as I understand this, these machines continue to produce vouchers that are valid now. And for them to can do that when the system has migrated to another level, they need someone inside who goes out and gives them the new code. Yeah, who goes and gives that machine, that old machine. Because these machines are the old machines of scratch card that you could find at 7-Eleven. Those are the machines. We no longer use those machines here at Eskom. But there's a particular protocol, and I'm speaking big language. There's a particular protocol that you need someone inside to go to those guys and say, you need to key in this code, and then you use this laptop and you can breach this, then it will produce a valid voucher. So we kind of understand that. We are in the process of getting to those people. The problem is the person that you find that can tell you who are those people, you cannot help but just check that person and you find that person himself is a problem in another area. But I'm just pointing out that our legal audit and forensic are dealing with that. It is something that does worry me all the time. I have a lot of my township people that tell me, no, we're not going to allow you to be made buried with people selling vouchers here. We know in Vereeniging there's this happening. We know in Klerksdorp there is this happening. But I can't go there with a gun and go and take those. So we are working with the law enforcement agencies to try and come to the end of that. Thank you, Ted. And whilst I have the mic, let me say this to you, Ted. I've said this to you privately. I want to say this publicly. I would invite you to give us solutions. Please, please, whatever solution you have, just throw it in the fixed box. We need answers. As I said, Eskom's problem can never be solved by Eskom alone, because they are not Eskom's alone problem. They are a problem for the country, they are a problem for the economy. Kalip, you want to talk about whether you want 800 or you want
So, thanks, Chair. So the difference between what's in the financials, understand this is IFRS, that's historic cost accounting, and for the regulatory purposes, we use revalued basis in terms of your asset determination. That's the reason for the difference between the 800 and what's disclosed in the MYPD application. Maybe while I have the mic, let me address some of the other questions that relate to me. Antonette's question, what is our forecast? The board's challenge to myself, the executive and management is we need to aim to come in at about a 15 billion loss. Having said that, we understand things are moving, things are being a challenge, but that's the target we are trying for from a year-end loss. Maybe the other point before Dedre speaks about maybe the sustainability, understand to fix it again is a cost. Now, do I have the money? How can I fund it? Now, it's not only to fix the environmental issues from a cost perspective. You need to have space in the system in terms of time to take out the stations and then deal with the environmental requirements. As Jan has said, the system is tight. So there are two important factors when you want to address environmental. What will it cost? I think previously Deirdre can explain the number. It's significant. We have some environmental compliance in our application, but that just takes us to what we have, my understanding, agreed as a middle of the ground. If we had to do full compliance, that's not in any of our projections at this point in time. And maybe to add to Ted's point, as one of the fixing, if we can get a tariff of half of where we are now, understanding that includes transmission and distribution, which in my calculation is probably about 20 cents per kilowatt out of the 90 cents that we're selling at, which means that your generation supply should be 20 cents per kilowatt. And with base load and all these other mix in the technology, I'd like to see how those sums are calculated. Maybe, yeah, and segmental accounting, I wasn't too clear on the question. We've always reported segmental accounting. That's a management reporting on how you're doing. The trick here when we talk ring fencing and especially aligned to the regulatory requirements per license of generation, transmission and distribution, the operating cost is the easy part. So how do you allocate the 419 billion of debt to generation, transmission and distribution? Some of it is linked to projects, which is easy, but when you get the portfolio funding, how do I allocate that debt to each of the respective licensees? And that is the real ring fencing and that functional to get the proper view of profit and loss, as well as the balance sheet from a totally ring fence or licensee view of generation, transmission and distribution. You need to take the service and support functions and allocate it according to its cost activities back to the licensees. Yes, one can make assumptions, but to do it properly will require cost-based accounting, and that's what the chairman's referring to.
Just before I leave, to the other two questions from Antoinette. 51% was never a policy, so it hasn't changed. It never existed. It was an aspiration that management had. It was never a policy. So we have not changed it.
Richard, just add that if you are looking at the money spent, about 72% of our spend is in non-black owned companies. In other words, black companies that are owned, or companies that are owned by less than 50 plus 1 black people.
The question on our legal department, I think they're good. I think they're good. Or these are the ones we can afford. I think they're good. I think they're doing a good job within our budget. The issue on this litigation is a bit more complicated than a straightforward, the data is not paid, you cut lights. Because what is happening, the businesses do pay their money to the municipality. The municipality takes their money and pay other things than for the source of the electricity. That's where the problem is. Now, they then take us to court when we cut them, say, you can't cut us, we've paid. And the answer was for us to get involved and supply directly, which we then hit this constitutional issue of where reticulation resides, which resides with the local authorities. So that's where we got caught up. But I was encouraged by the words of the judge in the last case, that government must sort this problem and Eskom must be paid its money. And that's all we want. We want no more, that's all we want. Because we have incurred costs to produce this power, to transmit it to you. You took our power, you sold it, with a markup, you were paid, you decided to spend the money elsewhere. So there are all types of ideas that we are trying to look at, including getting some arm's length escrow account that this money can go into that escrow. The escrow would pay us our money, and if there is anything that still remains, can go to the municipality to do what it wants to do. So that's where we at. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I really am sorry. I hope you have raised those burning questions that needed me personally to deal with. If there are others in my absence, like they do in Parliament, I'll deal with your written questions through the Speaker. So, but thank you very much. I'm not running away from answering your questions. I really would have loved to stay longer, but this might be the reason why we should talk again. Thank you very much. If you would be kindly excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As the Chairman prepares to leave, there's one question outstanding from Chris about the gas emissions. The gas emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions.
There's Leo, he wants to answer it.
Okay.
I think there's perhaps two questions that Chris is asking. The one is on the SOX. And the answer is short on that one, Chris. That process is unfolding between the departments.
Sorry, Leo, just to interrupt there. So for the camera people, they're asking if you can come here. So that's Leo Tlamini. He's the acting head of risk.
Thank you. So there's two questions. Oh, they're on in front?
Yes.
That's good. So two questions, Chris. The one is a very broad question. Let me deal with the first part of it, and Jedway is going to come in here. The SOX question is a process that's outside our process, as you rightly state. Department of Environmental Affairs, in fact, just last week at the Portfolio Committee, Environmental Affairs, this issue about the adjustments of the limits was raised. There's a conversation that's on the go. I know there's a follow-up engagement between the Portfolio Committee and the department to look at the process that led to that limit being adjusted. We're participating in that as observers in that conversation. To the extent that those limits are then reversed, then we comply, because that's what we do. But the bigger conversation that you ask, you talk about environmental sustainability. It's a bigger conversation. I mean, rightly said, the one part is the air quality. And here there's quite a bit of work that we've done. Calibre started talking about what would 100% compliance talk to. You know about the 300 billion. You know about the penalty in terms of how much planned maintenance we'll need to have to be able to implement some of that stuff. You know about what the impact on the tariff will be to be able to achieve that 100%. The aspiration, as you know, is for us to get to 57% compliance by 2025. That's our aspiration. Why do we do the postponements? Because we do the postponements so that we stay within compliance. And there is a whole program, abatement program, that we focus on. And let me also say this, Chris, that arguably where we stand today, if we just talk about, and I'm not going to talk about the CO2 and our going into in terms of business model, moving and changing our energy mix, getting nuclear and some of the renewables, which is part of the unfolding plan. Because that whole conversation talks to environmental sustainability. If I just talk about that part, arguably where we are right now is probably the worst that we are in terms of emissions. Because in the next 10 to 15 years, a lot of those stations will be decommissioned. This you know. And if you look at our offset programs that we have, there's going to be 40,000 homes where we're going to go and actually implement insulation, transferring or transitioning from people using coal to cook and heating, to electricity and LP gas. All of that's basic improvement. So what I'm saying is right now and transitionally, we're probably at our worst, getting better in terms of air quality. And you can't, and as you rightly said, So environmental, you can't avoid the cost element because the man on the street at the end of the day will be impacted by the tariff. So you can't overcorrect at the price of everything else. And I think what we're doing is a balanced approach that talks to the environmental sustainability. Thanks. I don't know if you want to add anything, Deirdre? Good.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dlamini. We're going to take, I'm told there's at least 1 or 2 people on the line, so if you can get those ones.
Thank you. The first question comes from Lily Donnelly of Mail and Guardian.
Hello. I would just like to know, you've mentioned one of the measures to kind of enhance revenue is what sounds like it amounts to preferential pricing agreements with some of your larger customers. But these have in the past been a huge headache for Eskom. We had weird derivatives contracts that impacted your bottom line very badly. So I'm wondering how Eskom is planning to mitigate against these kinds of problems emerging again. And in the time between 2008 and now, Eskom's electricity prices have gone up very much. I mean, how interested are your large customers to buy this power, even if it is discounted, will be at, I assume, much higher prices than they would have had in the past? I mean, so how much real appetite is there for these kind of agreements?
Thank you so much. Is there another one? No.
Sorry, sir. The next question comes from Audrey Ballard of CACIB.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Audrey Bio from KC France. I have one question regarding the status update on the NESRA revenue applications. I just want you to confirm that the 32.7 billion recovery approved by the NESRA is the result of the 66 billion which were under consideration previously this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I've been advised that although this is a media briefing, if we have other interested parties here who would like to ask questions, they also will be allowed to do so. But obviously, I'm also aware of the time constraints, but we are not going to shut the door to anyone. We're going to take Chris Yelland, and then I'll take Alex again. This will probably maybe be the last one, given that almost everyone is covered. After Alex is going to be Paul, and then last will be Mr. Ted Blom again. We'll start with Chris.
Yes, good morning again, Chris Yelland. I'm just a little bit confused. I was not at the previous State of the System address, but I heard that in fact a figure was mentioned of liquid assets, cash, of 17 billion rand at hand at that point. At that point. It was, I think it was said that it was 17 billion rand. And today you also mentioned that figure, that cash on hand was 17 billion rand. Is that 17 billion today? I'd be interested to know, what it is at the moment, as opposed to any earlier figure that you may have mentioned. Is 17 billion rand your liquid assets at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Alex?
Question about the forms of debt relief. Mr. Mabuza answered the question about bondholders and Lazard, but could you give any more detail? I mean, have you been already started discussions, or do you plan to, with DFIs, any local investors? Have talks started with the government? Sorry, the question is about the debt relief again. And so Mr. Mabuza answered the question about bondholders, but how about other forms of creditors to Eskom, DFIs, the government itself, or Or, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Paul?
Yes, my question was also along those lines. If you could also give any, I mean, the soccer reference, the haircut reference, I understood. The soccer reference was lost on me a little, the Kaiser Chiefs bit. So the haircut, yeah, I understand. So that would mean that debt restructuring is not being discussed at this point, and it's not in the, in the near future. But the other part in terms of the load of the debt and the serviceability of the debt, and how he sees debt, or how you would see debt relief, I guess, defined in that case. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Ted Blom?
Yes, thank you. I've got two questions, please, Mr. Pasivi. The first one is, the chairman, unfortunately, is now left, has publicly acknowledged that there's about 10,000 too many people on the payroll at Eskom. Other members of the executive have acknowledged about 20,000. My number is 35,000. Now, I ask you, with tears in my eyes, how can Eskom put forward an NYPD application and state in its application that it's an efficient producer of electricity? I don't understand that. With 30 or 10 or 1,000 too many payroll people or more, how can Eskom state that it's an efficient electricity producer? That's my first question. The second question is, and it's directed to the Chief Operating Officer, is can you please give us the real EAF for coal in Mpumalanga? Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Mr. Hadebe?
The 17 billion, I think the first one is Chris, huh?
Yes, Chris, yes.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, Chris, no, that's as of September. Our cash liquid assets today is 11 billion rand. Yes.
Then, Alex, you're asking about the debt relief. Maybe that's the wrong term in the first place. We're not here for a haircut. Previously, when I announced something of this sort, it was interpreted as a haircut. We're here for a balance sheet optimization. And at this moment in time, it's still not a priority. But depending what happens on the negotiations with government, or whether or not government has options that it can put on the table, it could be in different forms. It could be for the guarantee that government has already, guaranteed to convert that and put it in the government's balance sheet. It could be cash injection. There are a couple of issues, But again, if you undertake a project that appears to be a haircut or debt issue, at least you should have done and cleaned your house so that it's not seen by the market as a haircut. So if we were to go that route, we'll make sure that we don't start on that. Allow us to do the things that we said we are going to do. Cut the cost, maximize revenue, improve our EBITDA, then and only then we can move towards that level, because you're proving yourself. How we came across earlier was that while the market was still worried about the sustainability of the Eskom, we were already talking about debt optimization. It will be done a bit differently this time. I guess again, on the balance sheet optimization, debt relief, how would it be defined? These are discussions that will be ongoing, But like I've already indicated, it's more about the balance sheet and less about debt, because we have already indicated that our debt has reached certain levels that is no longer sustainable to maintain them. The question is, how are you going to bring down those gearings? Or let me put the other way around. The presentation that indicated the cost-cutting measures has an impact only on the income statement. And on a huge balance sheet like us, it doesn't have a sustainable impact. The second layer is, once we have undertaken this, what then needs to be done on your balance sheet to optimize it so that you can stand on your own? Because to the extent that our EBITDA is still sitting so low at 21, 25 or so, and we are borrowing to service debt, we are not going to be able to solve that problem by cutting the cost, but we also have to work on the balance sheet. So those are discussions that are ongoing as we move forward. I think...
I'll deal with Yeah, with regard to, I think it's Audrey's question around the RCAs, yes, the 32 billion in terms of nurses' determination, that will flow to Eskom over a 4-year period in equal tranches of 8.1 billion rand, commencing in April 2019. So already as we get into the next financial year, the price of electricity to address the 8.1 billion has an impact of 4.1%, and that commences next year.
With regard to the number of the headcount, Ted, I think it's not a good way of presenting the case. The issue is when we're looking at our productivity levels vis-a-vis other utilities around the world, are we competitive? The answer is no, we're not competitive. Then the second question is, how then are you going to make yourself competitive? The last time we were competing against the best was 2008 and 2009. And there are a number of scenarios that we have looked into that indicate why we were competitive at that moment in time. So we have a plan and a program that is included in our own strategy that will seek to ensure that we move towards those productivity levels. But it's not just about the headcount.
Sorry, sir. With respect, my context was, with that headcount surplus, how can Eskom, without tears in my eyes, tell NERSA it's efficient and it deserves a price increase?
Well, remember, these are the assumptions as we have it today and the headcount that's currently on our books. We have not reduced our headcount. That is, whatever, if that is part of the strategy and how we deal with it, when you make an application, you make use of the assumptions you have at this point in time. That's the basis on which we've applied. The regulator will then determine what is efficient. So it'll go through the process, and as you know, Ted, all stakeholders will comment, they welcome, they're invited to give their commentary to NERSA during the public hearings, whether written or in presentation mode.
Yeah, just to add, but it goes back to the productivity levels across the business, which will determine whether we get what we're expecting or we'll get less.
With respect to dose integrity and making a proper presentation to NERSA about efficiency, if we know we are inefficient, how can we say to NERSA we are an efficient producer and we are justified in getting a tariff increase? That's what's in the document.
Okay. But maybe, okay, Jan, you wanted to add?
Thank you, Kulu. Ted, your question, the fossil fuel, EAF, I don't have the figure with me. I do apologize, but I will let you have it. I'll send it to you. But it's lower, but I will send it to you. And I think you've alerted me now. When we make these presentations in future, I will actually separate it. So I'll do that. Thank you.
See, I think there was a last question from Paul about restructuring. He is covered. Okay, sure. Thank you. Well, okay, this is possibly the last round now, Antoinette. If there's anyone else besides Mr. Blom, yes, okay, we will take you, and then those are the last two questions. Thank you. We'll start with Antoinette. Thank you, Antoinette.
That's a difficult question, because when you're talking about how you're going to work out on debt, you have to relate the outstanding amount of debt to your projected tariff increase. If your tariff increase is projected to increase by 15%, then surely your debt will decrease, But if you're going to get 6 or 7%, then your debt will increase. I can't be specific and list the options that we have looked into. Needless to say that we have looked at a number of options, and we have made certain assumptions with regard to the tariff. And at this tariff, what is it that would be appropriate for Eskom? I think I've answered the question.
Well, that brings us to the end. The last question has been answered. No, she said she's fine. We covered. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm told there's a little drink, something prepared for you next door. They will take you through to that one. Thank you so much.
We do this every time. I struggled today, yes.
Hey, yeah, no. What was happening today?
No, there's someone, that guy, he's got a mic on his what. There's a router there. So it's transmitting to the phone, to chorus call. So people on chorus call, they're complaining. So I switched it off.
Shouldn't you be seeing and training? Sorry.